The night was quiet, just the way Ryan liked it. He stood alone on the beach watching tiny lights flicker in the water. These weren't regular lights. They were living creatures, so small you could barely see them, but together they made the ocean glow like magic. Ryan was a scientist who studied ocean life, and nights like this were his favorite part of the job. He had his equipment set up on the sand, notebooks scattered around, a thermos of coffee keeping him company. The beach was empty. Most people were home, sleeping in their warm beds. But Ryan preferred being here under the stars, with just the sound of waves and the cool breeze on his face. Then something changed. The sky lit up. At first, Ryan thought it was a shooting star. People always made wishes on those, right? But this light was different. It was too bright, too close, and it was getting closer. The light streaked across the sky, leaving a trail of sparks behind it. Ryan's heart started beating faster. This wasn't a star. This was something falling. The object hit the ocean about 200 feet from shore. The impact sent water spraying high into the air. Ryan stood frozen for a moment, trying to understand what he'd just seen. A meteor? A piece of space junk? Whatever it was, it had crashed into his research area. He should have called someone. The Coast Guard maybe, or the police. But something inside him said to wait to see first. Ryan kicked off his shoes and ran into the water. The ocean was cold, colder than he expected, but he kept swimming toward where the object had fallen. The water around the crash site was glowing, but not from the plankton this time. This was a different kind of light, almost silver. Ryan's scientific mind was racing with questions, but his heart was pumping with pure adrenaline. As he got closer, he saw something floating in the water. Not something. Someone. It was a girl. A young woman, maybe in her 20s, floating face up in the water. She wasn't moving. Ryan's training kicked in. He swam faster, reached her, and checked if she was breathing. She was, thank God. But her clothes were strange. They looked like they were made of metal, but soft like fabric. They shimmered in the moonlight, changing colors. Ryan pulled her toward shore, struggling against the waves. She was light, lighter than she should have been. When he finally got her onto the sand, he could see her more clearly. She looked human mostly, but there was something different about her. Her skin had a faint glow to it, and her hair was longer than any hair he'd ever seen, reaching past her waist in shades of silver and blue. He tried to wake her up, gently at first, calling out, checking her pulse. Her heartbeat was there, but strange. Too fast, maybe, or too slow. He couldn't tell. After a few minutes that felt like hours, her eyes opened. They were the most unusual eyes Ryan had ever seen. They were large, with pupils that seemed to shift and change shape, and the color was something between violet and silver. She looked at him, confused and scared. Then she tried to speak. The sounds that came out of her mouth weren't English. They weren't any language Ryan had ever heard. They were melodic, almost like singing, but with clicks and tones that human vocal cords shouldn't be able to make. Ryan held up his hands, trying to show her he meant no harm. She sat up quickly, looking around the beach in panic. She touched her head, then looked at the ocean, then back at Ryan. She said something in that strange language, urgent and desperate. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the fear in her voice. She was lost. She was hurt. She needed help. Ryan made a decision right there on that beach. Whatever this girl was, wherever she came from, she needed help. And something told him that calling the authorities would be the worst thing he could do. He pointed to himself and said slowly, "Ryan. My name is Ryan." Then he pointed to her with a questioning look. She stared at him for a moment, then seemed to understand. She pointed to herself and made a sound that was close to Lyra. At least that's what it sounded like to his ears. Lyra tried to stand but stumbled. Ryan caught her. Her skin was warm, warmer than normal. She was shaking, and he realized she must be in shock. He gestured toward his beach house, which was just up the path from where they stood. She looked uncertain, but she nodded. Getting her to the house was slow. She kept stopping to look at things. Regular things. The sand beneath her feet, the palm trees swaying in the wind, the wooden steps leading up to his deck. Everything seemed to fascinate and frighten her at the same time. Inside, Ryan turned on the lights and Lyra jumped at the sudden brightness. He dimmed them quickly. She was looking around his small house like she'd never seen anything like it. His books, his computer, his coffee maker. Everything was new to her. That's when Ryan's scientific mind caught up with what his gut already knew. This girl wasn't from around here. She wasn't from anywhere on Earth. He got her a blanket and some water. She looked at the glass like she didn't know what it was. Ryan demonstrated drinking from his own glass. She copied him, taking a small sip. Then her eyes went wide and she drank the whole thing. She was clearly thirsty. For the next hour they tried to communicate. Lyra would point at things and Ryan would tell her the English words. She'd repeat them, but her pronunciation was off. Still, she was learning fast. Really fast. Faster than should have been possible. She pointed at the window, at the moon visible through it, and then she started drawing on the paper Ryan gave her. What she drew made his blood run cold and his heart race at the same time. She drew Earth. Then she drew the moon. Then she drew another planet, far away, with 2 suns. She pointed to that planet, then to herself. She was trying to tell him she was from there, from that distant world. Ryan's hands were shaking as he watched her draw more. She drew what looked like a small ship. Then she drew it broken, with parts scattered. She pointed to the ocean, making a crashing motion with her hands. Her ship had crashed. That's what he'd seen falling from the sky. The reality of the situation hit him like a wave. There was an alien girl sitting in his living room, an actual alien, from another planet. And her ship was at the bottom of the ocean, probably destroyed. She was stranded here, with no way to call home, no way to get back. Lyra looked at him with those strange, beautiful eyes. She could see that he understood. She said something in her language, and even though he couldn't understand the words, he could hear the emotion. She was scared. She was alone. She was asking for help. Ryan nodded. He didn't know what he was getting into. He didn't know how he was going to help her. But he knew he couldn't turn her away. Whatever happened next, they were in this together now. Morning came too quickly. Ryan hadn't slept at all. He'd spent the whole night watching Lyra, making sure she was okay, trying to understand what had happened. She'd finally fallen asleep on his couch, wrapped in every blanket he owned. Even with all those blankets, she was still shivering. When the sun rose, Lyra woke up suddenly like she'd heard an alarm only she could hear. She looked at the sunlight coming through the windows with wonder. She walked to the window and put her hand against the glass, feeling the warmth. Then she turned to Ryan and smiled. It was the first time she'd smiled, and it made her look so human, so normal. But Ryan knew she was anything but normal. They needed a plan. Ryan knew he couldn't keep her hidden in his house forever. Eventually, someone would notice. His neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, was already nosy enough. If she saw a strange girl coming and going from his house, there would be questions. Questions Ryan couldn't answer without sounding completely crazy. But first, they needed to deal with the ship. If it was still out there in the ocean, someone might find it. Divers, fishermen, or worse, the military. Ryan had to see if there was anything left of it, anything they could salvage. Using gestures and more drawings, Ryan explained to Lyra what he wanted to do. Her eyes lit up when she understood. She nodded eagerly and pointed to herself, then to the ocean. She wanted to go with him. She needed to go with him. They waited until afternoon when the beach would be less crowded. Ryan gathered his diving equipment and told Lyra to wear some of his clothes. His sister had left some things at his house months ago. The clothes didn't fit Lyra perfectly, but they were better than that strange metallic outfit she'd been wearing. At the beach, Ryan was relieved to see it was mostly empty. Just a few people walking their dogs in the distance. He and Lyra made their way to a rocky area where he'd hidden a small boat. He used it sometimes for his research trips. Getting Lyra into the boat was interesting. She'd never been in a boat before, that much was clear. She gripped the sides so hard her knuckles turned white. But once they started moving, once she felt the rhythm of the waves, she relaxed. She even laughed, a sound like wind chimes. Ryan navigated to where he thought the crash had happened. Lyra looked over the side of the boat, peering into the water. Then she did something that made Ryan's jaw drop. She dove in, fully clothed without any diving equipment. He shouted after her, but she was already under the water. He waited, counting the seconds. 1 minute passed. Then 2, then 3. Ryan was starting to panic. No one could hold their breath that long. Just as he was about to dive in after her, Lyra surfaced. She was smiling and gesturing for him to come down. She'd found something. Ryan put on his diving gear and went under. The water was murky, but his flashlight cut through it. About 30 feet down, he saw it. The ship, or what was left of it. It was small, about the size of a car, and it was partially buried in the sand. Parts of it were still glowing with that silver light. Lyra swam around it like a fish, completely comfortable underwater. She was checking different panels, trying to open compartments. Ryan helped as much as he could. Together, they managed to pull out several pieces of equipment. Strange devices that hummed and glowed. Pieces of metal that felt too light to be real. They made several trips, bringing everything to a sea cave Ryan knew about. It was hidden, protected from the tide, and most importantly, no one ever went there. It became their secret workshop. Over the next 2 days, Ryan watched Lyra work on her equipment. She was brilliant. She didn't just understand technology. She created it, modified it, made it work with whatever materials she had. Ryan brought her parts from his lab, old electronics, batteries, wires. She took everything and somehow made it useful. But the more time they spent together, the more Ryan noticed something was wrong. Lyra was getting tired more easily. She'd work for hours, then suddenly need to rest. Her skin, which had been glowing faintly, was starting to dim. And that fever he'd noticed the first night was getting worse. They were in the cave one evening when Lyra showed Ryan something that made his stomach drop. She pulled up her sleeve and showed him her arm. Under her skin there were patterns like veins, but they were the wrong color. They should have been silver, she indicated. But they were turning dark, almost black. Through their makeshift communication, a mix of words, drawings, and gestures they'd developed, Lyra explained what was happening. Earth's atmosphere was different from her home. The oxygen levels, the pressure, the gravity, everything was slightly off. Her body could handle it for a while, but not forever. She had maybe 5 days, maybe less, before her body would start to fail. Ryan felt sick. 5 days? That wasn't enough time. Not enough time to fix her ship. Not enough time to figure out how to help her. Not enough time for anything. He asked her, through their strange shared language, if there was anything he could do. Any way to help? Lyra thought for a moment, then started working on one of her devices. After an hour, she got it working. It was some kind of communication device, she explained. She'd been trying to send a signal, a call for help to her people, but she couldn't be sure if anyone would receive it. Space was big, so incredibly big, and her people might not be close enough to hear it. Still, she sent the signal. A beam of light shot up from the device, so bright it lit up the entire cave for a moment. Then it was gone, traveling faster than light, carrying her message out into the darkness of space. Now all they could do was wait and hope. Hope that someone out there was listening. Hope that help would come in time. But hoping wasn't enough for Ryan. He was a scientist. He solved problems. There had to be something more he could do. That night, back at his house, Lyra surprised him. She'd been practicing English when he wasn't looking. She spoke 3 words clearly, with only a slight accent. "Thank you, Ryan." It was simple, but it meant everything. They sat on his deck, looking at the stars. Lyra pointed to different constellations, showing him patterns he'd never noticed before. She was teaching him about the universe, about her home, about things humans hadn't even dreamed of yet. And he was teaching her about Earth, about humanity, about what it meant to be human. Somewhere between explaining the difference between the ocean and the sea, and her trying to pronounce the word beach correctly, something changed. Ryan looked at her, really looked at her, and realized he didn't see an alien anymore. He saw a person, someone smart and funny and brave, someone who made him laugh when she mispronounced words, someone who looked at the world with wonder and curiosity. And maybe, just maybe, she was feeling something too, because when she looked at him, her strange eyes seemed to soften. She reached out and touched his hand, tentatively, like she was testing if it was okay. It was more than okay. They stayed like that for a long time, sitting under the stars, 2 beings from different worlds finding something they both understood, something that didn't need words to explain, something that transcended planets and species and everything that made them different. But in the back of Ryan's mind, a clock was ticking. 5 days, maybe less. Time was running out and he didn't know how to stop it. Day 3 hit Ryan like a punch to the gut. He woke up earlier than the sun, and went to check on Lyra. She'd insisted on sleeping in the guest room, trying to maintain some independence despite everything. When he knocked on her door, there was no answer. Panic seized his chest as he opened the door. Lyra was curled up on the bed, shaking violently. Her skin wasn't just warm anymore. It was hot, almost burning to the touch. The dark patterns under her skin had spread up her arms and were creeping toward her chest. Ryan didn't need to be a doctor to know this was bad. Really bad. He brought her water, cold compresses, anything he could think of. She drank a little but couldn't keep much down. When she tried to speak, her voice was weak, barely above a whisper. She kept saying something in her language over and over. It sounded like a prayer or maybe just a wish. Ryan knew he was in over his head. This wasn't something he could fix with his knowledge of marine biology. This was alien physiology, a body chemistry he couldn't even begin to understand. He felt helpless watching her suffer, knowing there was nothing he could do. Around noon, Lyra's condition stabilized a bit. The fever dropped slightly and she could sit up. She insisted they go back to the cave. She needed to check her equipment, needed to see if there had been any response to her signal. Ryan wanted to argue, wanted to make her rest, but he could see the determination in her eyes. So he helped her to the boat. At the cave, Lyra checked her communication device. Her hands were shaking as she worked the controls. Ryan watched her face, trying to read her expression. Then he saw it, a flicker of hope. There was something, a signal faint, but there. Someone had heard her. Through broken English and excited gestures, Lyra explained what the signal meant. A rescue ship was coming, but it wouldn't arrive for at least another day, maybe longer, 24 hours minimum. Looking at her condition, Ryan wasn't sure she had 24 hours. He helped her back to the house, supporting most of her weight. She was getting weaker by the hour. That's when Ryan remembered something. His work at the Marine Institute involved studying deep-sea creatures that lived under extreme pressure. They had specialized equipment, including a hyperbaric chamber. It was designed to simulate different atmospheric conditions. The idea hit him like lightning. If Lyra's body was failing because of Earth's atmosphere, maybe he could create an environment closer to what she needed. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but it was something. It was hope. He explained his idea to Lyra. She looked at him with those fading eyes and nodded. She trusted him. That trust made Ryan's heart hurt and gave him strength at the same time. They were going to do this. They had to, but there was a problem. A big one. The Marine Institute was closed at night, and he didn't have access to the chamber without authorization. He'd have to break in, steal equipment, risk his career, his reputation, maybe even his freedom. If he got caught, there would be questions he couldn't answer. Ryan thought about the girl sitting beside him. The girl who'd crashed into his life from the stars. The girl who'd shown him wonders he never imagined. The girl who'd somehow become the most important person in his world in just 3 days. The decision wasn't hard at all. He called his research assistant, a young woman named Kai. She was smart, trustworthy, and more importantly, she had the access codes they needed. When she answered the phone, Ryan took a deep breath and told her he needed help. Big help. The kind of help that might get them both fired or worse. To his surprise, Kai didn't hesitate. She said she'd meet him at the Institute at midnight. She didn't ask questions. She just trusted him. Ryan realized he had better friends than he'd thought. Midnight came. Ryan and Kai met in the parking lot. He'd left Lyra in the car, wrapped in blankets, barely conscious. When Kai saw her, her eyes went wide. She'd probably been expecting some kind of injured animal or maybe an illegal research project. She definitely wasn't expecting this. To Kai's credit, she didn't freak out. She stared for a moment, then looked at Ryan and said, "Okay, let's get her inside." No questions, no accusations, just help. That's what real friendship looked like. They snuck into the building through a side entrance. The institute was dark and empty. Just the hum of equipment and the sound of water flowing through the tanks. They got Lyra to the chamber room without being seen. Every shadow made Ryan's heart race. Every sound made him think they were caught. The chamber was a large cylindrical room with thick glass walls. Inside, they could control temperature, pressure, oxygen levels, and atmospheric composition. Ryan started adjusting the settings, trying to recreate what he thought Lyra's home atmosphere might be like. Higher oxygen, lower nitrogen, increased pressure. He was guessing, working on instinct and hope. They got Lyra into the chamber. She looked so small in there, so fragile. Ryan spoke to her through the intercom, his voice shaking. He told her she was going to be okay.
He told her to hold on.
He told her that tomorrow was coming, that her rescue ship was coming, that she just needed to survive until then. Lyra pressed her hand against the glass from inside. Ryan pressed his hand on the outside, matching hers. Glass separated them, but the connection was real. She mouthed words he couldn't hear, but he understood. She was saying thank you. She was saying goodbye just in case. Ryan activated the chamber. The atmospheric controls kicked in with a hiss. He watched the monitors, watched Lyra's vital signs, watched everything he could. For the first few minutes, nothing changed. Then slowly, gradually, her breathing became easier. The dark patterns under her skin stopped spreading. The fever started to drop. It was working. The chamber was buying them time. Not much, but enough. Maybe enough. Ryan stayed by that window all night. Kai brought him coffee and kept watch for security. They took turns napping, but Ryan mostly stayed awake, talking to Lyra through the intercom. He told her about his life, his dreams, his fears. He told her about Earth, about all the places he wished he could show her. The mountains, the forests, the cities full of lights, and Lyra, weak but alive, talked back. Her English was getting better even now. She told him about her world, about cities made of crystal that sang in the wind, about oceans that glowed with their own light, about a sky with two suns that painted everything in gold and purple. She told him about her people, about their long lives and their careful, logical ways. She told him that they didn't feel emotions the same way humans did. They were more controlled, more measured. But being here, being with him, she'd felt things she'd never felt before. Fear, yes, but also joy, curiosity, and something else. Something she didn't have words for in either language. Ryan knew what she meant. He felt it too. This impossible connection between two impossible people. Something that shouldn't exist but did anyway. Something that made all of this worth it. The fear, the risk, the uncertainty of tomorrow. Around dawn, alarms started going off. Not the chamber alarms. Building security alarms. Someone had noticed they were there. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness outside the room. Voices shouted, demanding they come out. Kai looked at Ryan in panic. They were caught. It was over, but Ryan didn't care anymore. Lyra was alive. That's all that mattered. He squeezed the walkie-talkie he'd been using to talk to her. He told her not to be afraid. He told her he'd handle this. The door burst open. Security guards rushed in, followed by someone Ryan didn't expect. Dr. Lin from the Institute's research division. She took one look at the chamber, at Lyra inside, at all the equipment, and her face went pale. But not with anger. With awe. Dr. Lin walked slowly to the chamber, staring at Lyra like she was seeing a miracle. Which Ryan supposed she was. The security guards looked confused, waiting for orders. Dr. Lin held up a hand, stopping them. She turned to Ryan and asked one question. Just one. Is she what I think she is? Ryan nodded. There was no point in lying now. Dr. Lin stood there for a long moment, then turned to the security guards. She told them there'd been a misunderstanding. An emergency research project. Nothing to worry about. The guards looked skeptical but left when she insisted. When they were alone, Dr. Lin turned back to Ryan. She should have been angry. She should have called the authorities. Instead, she smiled. A real genuine smile. She said 4 words that changed everything. How can I help? Dr. Lin took charge with the kind of calm efficiency that came from years of crisis management. She sent Kai to create false records, making it look like the chamber had been scheduled for a legitimate experiment. She locked down the lab, ensuring no one else would come in, and she sat down with Ryan, demanding to know everything. Ryan told her the whole story. The crash, the rescue, Lyra's deteriorating condition. He expected skepticism, maybe even anger. Instead, Dr. Lin listened with the focus of someone hearing the most important briefing of their life. When he finished, she simply nodded and said, "We need to keep her alive until the rescue ship arrives. What do you need?" What Ryan needed was a miracle, or at least better monitoring equipment. Lyra's biology was stable in the chamber, but she wasn't improving. She was in a holding pattern, suspended between life and death. They needed to understand her physiology better, to adjust the chamber's settings more precisely. Dr. Lin brought in equipment from her own research labs. Sensors, monitors, analysis tools. Nothing designed for alien biology, of course, but she and Ryan adapted what they had. They worked together through the morning, running tests, adjusting variables, watching Lyra's responses to every tiny change. Lyra was conscious, but weak. She could barely speak, even through the intercom. But she watched them work with those strange, shifting eyes. She trusted them with her life. Ryan felt the weight of that trust like a physical thing. Around noon, Kai came running back into the lab. She'd been monitoring communications, waiting for any sign of Lyra's rescue ship. Her face was a mix of excitement and worry. The ship had sent another signal. It was closer now, much closer. It would arrive that evening. But there was a problem. The ship couldn't land. It was too large, too conspicuous. It was sending a smaller pod instead. A medical unit that could pick up Lyra and take her to the main ship waiting in orbit. The pod would arrive at the beach after sunset. They had to get Lyra there. Ryan's heart sank. Moving Lyra meant taking her out of the chamber. And taking her out of the chamber in her current condition might kill her. But if they didn't move her, if she missed the pod, she'd die anyway. The rescue ship couldn't wait. It had already taken a huge risk coming this close to Earth. Dr. Lin saw the problem immediately. She started calculating, running numbers, trying to figure out how long Lyra could survive outside the chamber. Her answer wasn't encouraging. Maybe 30 minutes. Maybe an hour if they were lucky. And they needed at least 45 minutes to get from the institute to the beach. It was going to be close. Dangerously close. But it was their only option. They started preparing. Dr. Lin designed a portable atmospheric system using diving tanks and medical oxygen equipment. It wouldn't be as good as the chamber, but it might be enough. It had to be enough. Ryan explained the plan to Lyra through the intercom. She understood. She was scared he could see it in her eyes, but she nodded. She was ready. She'd known from the beginning that survival wasn't guaranteed. At least now there was a chance. As sunset approached, they made their move. Ryan and Dr. Lin carefully brought Lyra out of the chamber and connected her to the portable system. The moment she left the controlled environment, her vitals started dropping, not dramatically but steadily. The clock was ticking. They carried her to Dr. Lin's car, trying to be as gentle as possible. Kai drove, navigating through evening traffic with controlled urgency. Every red light felt like a lifetime. Every delay made Ryan's stomach knot tighter. In the back seat, he held Lyra, monitoring her breathing, watching her face grow paler. She looked up at him and tried to smile. Even now, even like this, she tried to comfort him. She whispered in broken English, "You saved me, Ryan. Whatever happens, you saved me." Her words broke something inside him. He'd done everything he could, but what if it wasn't enough? They reached the beach with 20 minutes to spare before the pod's scheduled arrival. The beach was empty, thank God. They carried Lyra to the spot where Ryan had first found her, where this whole impossible story had started. Dr. Lin and Kai stayed back, giving them space. This moment belonged to Ryan and Lyra. Ryan held her as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Colors that reminded him of her descriptions of her home world. Lyra was barely conscious now. The portable system was failing. They'd pushed it too far, asked too much. Her breathing was shallow, her pulse weak. He talked to her, desperate to keep her conscious. He told her about all the things he wished they'd had time for. Teaching her to surf, showing her a sunrise from a mountaintop, taking her to a concert so she could hear music played live. All the simple human experiences she'd never get to have. Lyra touched his face with a trembling hand. She'd learned that gesture from him weeks ago in the cave. It was a human thing, touching someone's face. Her people didn't do that. But she'd learned it because it mattered to him. Because she wanted to connect in his way, not just hers. She whispered something in her language. Then slowly she translated it into English, words she'd been practicing, saving for this moment. "Kiss me tonight, because tomorrow might never come." Her pronunciation was careful, deliberate. She'd memorized it, made sure she got it right. Ryan's vision blurred with tears. He knew what she was asking. One human moment, one connection that transcended species and circumstance. He leaned down and kissed her gently. Her lips were warm, fever hot, and the kiss tasted like salt from the ocean spray and the tears on his face. When he pulled back, Lyra was smiling. A real, genuine smile. She said something that sounded like beautiful. Then her eyes started to close. Ryan panicked, shaking her gently, calling her name. She couldn't die now, not now. Not when rescue was so close. That's when the sky lit up. A light descended from above, brighter than the sunset, brighter than anything natural. The medical pod. It was here. Ryan looked up, hope and terror fighting in his chest. The pod landed on the sand 30 feet away. Its door opened with a hiss, but Lyra wasn't moving. Her eyes were closed. Her breathing had stopped. No, no, no. Ryan started CPR, pumping her chest, breathing into her lungs. Kai and Dr. Lin ran over, helping. But they didn't know alien physiology any better than he did. The pod must have detected the emergency. Mechanical arms extended from it, moving with precise urgency. They reached Lyra, lifting her from Ryan's arms. He wanted to hold on, wanted to keep her, but he knew he had to let go. The pod was her only chance. The arms retracted, pulling Lyra inside. The door started to close. Ryan stumbled forward, shouting her name. Just before the door sealed completely, something happened. Lyra's eyes opened. Just for a second, she looked at him one last time. And she mouthed 2 words. Tomorrow comes, then the door closed. The pod lifted off the sand, silent and smooth. It rose into the darkening sky, faster and faster until it was just a point of light among the stars. Then even that light disappeared. Ryan stood there on the beach, chest heaving, covered in sand and salt and tears. Dr. Lin put a hand on his shoulder. Kai stood beside them, all 3 of them staring at the empty sky. No one spoke. What was there to say? She was gone. They didn't know if she'd survived. Didn't know if the pod's medical systems could save her. Didn't know anything. All they could do was hope and wait and wonder. Tomorrow had come, but was Lyra still alive to see it? The days after Lyra's departure were the hardest of Ryan's life. He went through the motions, showed up at work, pretended everything was normal. But nothing was normal. Every time he looked at the sky, he wondered if she was up there somewhere. Alive, dead, recovering? He had no way of knowing. Dr. Lin kept his secret. She understood that going public with what had happened would turn into a circus. Government agencies, military investigations, media frenzy. None of that would help anyone. So they stayed quiet and waited, but Dr. Lin didn't just wait. She was a woman of action, and she'd glimpsed something extraordinary. She reached out to colleagues she trusted, scientists who'd spent their careers searching for signs of extraterrestrial life. She built a small secret team, people who could be trusted, people who understood that humanity's first contact with alien life needed to be handled carefully. 3 weeks after Lyra left, Dr. Lin called Ryan into her office. She had news. The government had picked up unusual signals in orbit. Nothing conclusive, nothing they could identify. But something was out there, watching, waiting. Dr. Lin believed it was Lyra's people observing Earth, deciding what to do next. She'd been approached by representatives from several governments. Not officially, not in any way that would show up in records, but there were people in power who knew something had happened. They'd connected the dots. Strange signals, unusual atmospheric readings near the coast. Dr. Lin's sudden interest in forming an advisory committee. They wanted answers. Dr. Lin had negotiated carefully. She'd agreed to share what she knew, but only on certain conditions. No military involvement, no weapons research, no attempts to capture or threaten any alien visitors. If first contact was going to happen, it would be peaceful. It would be scientific. It would be done right. Ryan was overwhelmed. He'd just wanted to help one person. He'd never imagined it would lead to this. Dr. Lin smiled at his expression. She told him he'd done something incredible. He'd shown compassion when many others would have shown fear. He'd risked everything to save someone different from himself. That's the kind of person humanity needed representing them. She offered him a position on her team. He'd be one of the primary liaisons when Lyra's people made contact. It was a chance to be part of history, to maybe hopefully see her again. Ryan accepted immediately. The next few months were a blur of preparation, learning everything they could about the signals, trying to decode patterns in the transmissions, building protocols for peaceful contact. It was exciting and terrifying and sometimes tedious, but Ryan threw himself into it, grateful for the distraction, grateful for the purpose. Summer turned to fall, fall turned to early winter. 8 months after Lyra had left, Ryan had almost given up hope. Maybe her people had decided Earth wasn't ready. Maybe she'd told them humans were dangerous. Maybe she'd died in that pod, and no one was coming after all. Then one December evening, everything changed. Ryan was at the beach, standing in the same spot where he'd first found Lyra. He went there sometimes when he needed to think. The ocean was calm that night, the stars bright overhead. He was alone, just him and his memories. That's when he saw them. Lights in the sky. Not one or two, but dozens. They moved in formation, deliberate and precise. Ships. They had to be ships. Ryan's heart started pounding. He grabbed his phone, called Dr. Lin. She was already on her way. The government had detected them too. Everyone was mobilizing, but Ryan stayed on the beach. If they were coming down, this is where they'd land. This is where it had all started. This is where it should continue. He wasn't afraid. He was ready. The ships descended slowly, giving Earth's defenses plenty of time to track them, plenty of time to react. But they made no aggressive moves. They simply came down, graceful and controlled, landing on the beach in a wide circle. They were beautiful, these ships. Elegant curves and glowing surfaces that seemed to shift and change like Lyra's eyes. One ship landed closer than the others, right in front of Ryan. A door opened. Light spilled out. Ryan held his breath. This was it. First contact. The moment that would change everything for humanity. But for him it was more personal. It was hope. Hope that she'd survived. Hope that she'd remembered. Hope that promises made in desperate moments could actually be kept. A figure appeared in the doorway. Tall, slender, silhouetted against the light. Ryan couldn't see details yet, but his heart recognized what his eyes couldn't. It was her. He knew it was her. Lyra stepped out of the ship and onto Earth's sand for the second time. But this time she wasn't falling. She wasn't dying. She walked steadily, confidently, wearing clothes that looked like a mix of her world's style and human fashion. Adaptation. She'd learned from her time here. She saw Ryan and stopped. For a moment, they just stared at each other across the sand. 8 months. So much had happened. So much had changed. But some things, the important things, those stayed the same. Lyra smiled. That same smile he remembered from the pod, from the chamber, from quiet moments in the cave. She walked toward him, and Ryan met her halfway. They stood facing each other, and Ryan saw that she looked different. Healthier, obviously, but also more confident, more at ease. Being home had been good for her. She spoke first. Her English was perfect now, barely a trace of accent. "Hello, Ryan, I told you tomorrow would come." Her voice was exactly as he remembered, that melodic quality that no human voice could quite match. Ryan tried to speak but couldn't find words. So he did what felt natural. He pulled her into a hug. She hugged back, and for a moment nothing else mattered. Not the ships behind them, not the world watching, not the future hanging in the balance. Just two people reunited against impossible odds. When they finally pulled apart, Lyra was crying. Actual tears sliding down her face. She'd told him once that her people didn't cry, that they didn't feel emotions strongly enough for tears, but she was crying now. She touched her face in wonder, like she was discovering something new about herself. Behind them, more figures emerged from the ships. Lyra's people come to see Earth and its inhabitants. Dr. Lin arrived with her team. Government officials, scientists, everyone who'd been preparing for this moment. First contact protocols kicked in, careful introductions, formal greetings, the beginning of something new. But before all that, Lyra pulled Ryan aside. She had something to tell him. When she'd returned home, when she'd recovered, she'd told her people about Earth, about the ocean creatures that glowed in the dark, about the single sun that painted the sky in colors she'd never seen before, about music and coffee and the way sand felt between your toes. But mostly she'd told them about Ryan, about the human who'd risked everything to save a stranger, about compassion and courage and the kinds of connections that transcended species. Her people had listened, and they'd decided that any world that could produce someone like that was a world worth knowing. She'd asked to be part of the contact team, asked to be one of the ambassadors. Her superiors had been hesitant. She was young, inexperienced, and emotionally compromised. But she'd insisted, and eventually they'd agreed, because she understood something they didn't. She understood Earth not from observations and data, but from experience, from living it, from loving it. Lyra looked at Ryan and said, "I came back. I couldn't stay away. My people have long lives, Ryan, very long lives, and I plan to spend much of mine here, learning about your world. If that's okay with you." Ryan laughed. Actually laughed. It was okay with him. More than okay. In the coming months and years, there would be challenges, cultural differences, misunderstandings, the complex work of building bridges between two civilizations. But they'd figure it out together because tomorrow had come, and unlike that desperate night on the beach, they now had all the tomorrows they needed. The beach that night became a place of beginnings. Humans and aliens meeting for the first time, hands shaking across the void of space, languages mixing as people tried to communicate. And at the center of it all, Ryan and Lyra, the marine biologist who'd looked up at falling stars, the alien researcher who'd crashed into his life. They'd both been changed by their meeting. Ryan had learned that the universe was bigger, stranger, and more wonderful than he'd ever imagined. Lyra had learned that emotions weren't weaknesses. That connection mattered more than logic, that sometimes the most important discoveries weren't found in data, but in people. As the night went on, as history unfolded around them, Ryan and Lyra stood together on the beach. The same beach where she'd almost died. The same beach where he'd made the choice to help rather than report. The same beach where everything had changed. Lyra looked up at the stars, at the two suns of her homeworld somewhere up there. Then she looked at Earth's single sun, now set below the horizon. She'd seen both, lived in both worlds, and somehow, impossibly, she'd found a way to belong to both. Ryan looked at her and knew that whatever came next, they'd face it together. Because that's what you did when someone crashed into your life from the stars. You helped them. You saved them. And if you were really lucky, they came back for you. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Because in a universe full of stars and planets and endless space, they'd found something rare. They'd found home. Not a place, but a person. And that was worth crossing the universe for. Tomorrow had come, and I